In this exercise, we're going to create a panoramic view around a model that we've created, and as well as the platform, and add a few models or trees in there to make it look like our model is actually in an outdoor setting. To do that, we'll create a panoramic image and import that image and put it around a circular object. To do this exercise, it's handy to already have a pre-made model of your cabin. And we'll also want the person, the character that's been in our views to be present as well, just to have filler. Okay? So, let's get started. So let's begin by creating the foundation of our drawing. I'm going to change the orientation to look straight down. And I want this to be a rectangle, 100 by 100, but I also want the axis to be the center of that rectangle. So to do that, I could measure out 10 or 100 or find it, or I can simply zoom out a ways and draw my first rectangle and just guess. So if I start here and make it 100 by 100, I can see that I have a center right about there. Well, that means if I just start my other drawing here, it would be correct. So I'll just press Ctrl Z and I'll just plan to start my drawing here. Now the base for our cabin in the woods for our panorama, we're going to use the scratch tool. So from scratch, I'll click down here to that starting point I thought of. I see my grid spacing's 5 feet already. If I needed to change that, we just type, and you should type 5 feet and press enter, and it'll be set instead of 10. So I'll click over here in the corner. I'll go along the green axis 100 feet. I'll press enter, and then along the x-axis, or rather the red axis, another 100 feet. And there's my grid, and it's somewhat centered, which is good. The reason we use this grid is we want to actually create the terrain set the terrain to be somewhat uneven. And to do that, I'll need the select tool, and I'll just triple click or double click to get in, and I'll select randomly some squares. I'll hold a shift or control around the outside. Leave the center kind of flat. That's where our cabin's going to be. And I don't know if you're aware that random isn't necessarily equally spaced. Random can simply be small clusters and divided space. Okay, so I believe that's as random as I'm going to get it. When I choose the smooth tool, it looks like my radius is already 5 feet. I'm going to change that to 10. So if I just type 10 feet, I should be able to have my radius change. And I'll click my smooth tool, bring it up, not too tall. So smell that down just a little. Okay, so we just want this to be a little bit irregular. And then I'll click once more. Some other spaces. Okay, I'll leave it at that. So now that my ground's somewhat uneven, when I go to put a pattern on it, like grass, landscaping, let's find some somewhat textured grass, and I pour that on there. Let's see, I have to select it. There we are. And get my grass, pour it on. So it's somewhat textured. Oh, in this exercise, we also want to keep our character, because we're going to put our character in our scene. I think we're ready to bring in our cabin. So to do that, I'm going to import, and you would have had to have drawn it and saved it already someplace. I'll click on File, I'll click on Import, and navigate. Now when you go to look for this, if it was default, it would have looked for a SketchUp file or some other thing. If I click All Files or All Supported Image Types, it only finds images. if I switch to the one that starts with a D, DAE, then it'll see my actual shed or cabin, whichever you've drawn, and that's what I want. So I'll click Import, and it should show up somewhere there. So I'm just going to click it just someplace to get it in place, and then I can make adjustments. Yeah, it's a little bit too low. So use the Move tool and place it in the center of your drawing. There we are. So it's on the plane and looks okay. And there's my character. And I can add a few trees. If you brought your trees with it, fine. So I'm going to add a few trees, and I'll speed it up so you don't have to wait for me. Okay, I have a few models in there for trees. Now I'm ready to do my panorama. So I'm going to make sure I save this. Control S would suffice. And we'll start to build our panorama now. I'm going to zoom out and move my drawing off to the side because I want to draw the panorama, or at least import the picture off to the side. I'll adjust it later, but I want it to be tall because I want it to be in the background whenever I have views of this. I don't want to see any of this artificial sky or plane. So let's start by creating a rectangle. So let's make it 120 by 30. There we are. And I'll zoom out so I can see it. Now we'll import our picture and put it on this. We should have already created our panoramic picture, the one that can wrap around. And I'll find Import, go find my file. This is going to be in my Pictures folder. And I need to change this so I can actually see the picture. I'm going to go to all supported image types. That way I can see all of them and find my panorama. And, oh, in image file invalid. Well, it turns out if we choose an image file that's bigger than 1 meg, or at least it seems to be. If it's bigger than 1 meg, it won't come in. And that's what I chose, is one that was around, what does this say? About 4.3. So if I choose this image instead, 552K, it looks like it'll come in. I'm going to click it in this bottom corner of this shape and make it so it just fits inside there. Now it doubled. In other words, I couldn't guess the dimensions exactly, but I don't want to cut any off or have any overlapping. What I can do is change the scale of this, and we'll do that next. So we'll zoom in a little bit, and we want to select this upper edge and just move it down so that our picture fits just inside this shape, and it should have snapped to that edge. Okay, select away, and now this size can be changed to match what we need. So I want it to be scaled. I want it to be about 70 feet tall. So we'll see if we can scale that. I'm going to put a line here that's 70 feet. If I click it on the red line, bring it up, type 70 feet, press enter. So I want it to be about that tall. So I'll grab the scaling tool. There's my scaling tool. What if I can reference this? No, apparently not. That's roughly 70 feet. Okay, so we'll leave it there. And we'll delete that line. Okay, so there's our panoramic view, and we want to wrap that around the outside of this. So I'm going to make a circle around this, and I don't want this to get in the way of it, so I'm going to need to move it. I think I'll group this. That way when I go to move it, I can keep it together. There we are. So I've set it aside. Now the next step is to look straight down. We'll choose the center and we'll draw a circle out. Now I've learned that if you draw a circle based on whatever the surface is, it'll actually attach to it because that's all the reference it has. So we actually need to create something on our drawing that sits above our elements. So I'm going to create just a temporary antenna. We'll call it that, antenna tower, from the top of our roof, above our tree, somewhere up here. That's good enough. Escape. That is where we're going to base our circle. So make it vertical again, zoom back out. I think I can see that. Use the circle drawing tool. I'll find the tip of the tower and make our circle on the plane. There we are. And I can zoom out. Well, this circle just simply needs to be about 200 feet. So I'm going to make it a diameter of, or radius of, 200. I'll select the top of my tower, start my circle, and I want to make the radius 200 feet. There we go. Now does that big enough? Nope, it's not. Control Z. There, I've adjusted it so I can see the top of my tower. I'll click the circle, and I want the radius to be about 300 feet. That might be too big. Let's make it 250. Click the circle again. 250. And for me, that seems right. Okay. I'm going to move this radius down, so I need to disconnect it. I'll select that tower we made, and then select our circle, and we'll move it. We'll just move it down to just 5 or 6 feet below the plane, because we want to be able to view past the edges and not see any of this green sky. So we're going to start by moving it down. Select the move tool. I'll grab the edge. I'll drag it down and use the down arrow. That'll help. Come on, bring it down. There. Change the view so I could get to it and see the bottom. So it's just below, maybe 5-6 feet. I'll leave it there. And then I want to raise it up that same 70 feet or so. Let's find out how tall our image actually is already. So if I move this aside, I'll just pan over. There it is. Zoom out a little bit. And let's measure this. 67. So we'll make it 67. Looks like I need to move this again. We want it to be somewhat centered. It doesn't have to be. It could be off-centered, which is fine. So we'll put it right about there. Now, what we want to do is just make a circle around this. I'll change my view. There we are. We're going to pull this up. So use the push-pull tool and pull it up to be 67 feet. Okay, with that done, so the sides are 67 feet tall, I will delete the top surface, and I could delete the bottom surface, but I'm going to paint the bottom surface the same color as my grass. So I'm going to leave it. So I'll do that now. I'll just take care of that while I'm here. There it is, bottom surface. Now when we go to paint the inside of this, we're going to do really much the same thing. We'll zoom out so we can see our panoramic view. And what we're doing is we're going to use the paintbrush, or rather the paint bucket, and use this color picking tool. Sample paint, choose it, and then sample this texture. And since we brought it in as a texture, when we pour it, it will lay out as a texture. And now we can zoom in and see what we've done. And from our cabin, if we get about the same height as our character, as we pan around, we can see background. Oh, there's our tree. Too much of a good thing. Now we don't want to zoom out too much, because if we do, we end up backing out of the outside ring of this, and that's not good. So there's another view, panoramic view. So from here we're going to create scenes. When we create those scenes, we don't want to get this upper edge. So that'll be the next step, is creating scenes. I'd like you to create 6 scenes, some close and some away, that show off our cabin in the woods. Okay, so find some view that keeps you from seeing this bottom edge, and keeps you from seeing the blue sky, and shows off our cabin with the background that's there. So there's our trail. So I think I'll choose this one. This will be our first scene. And to get that to show up, I'll choose Window and Default Tray, and make sure Scenes, there it is turned on. So in my default tray, and I think I'll pin this open now since I'll use it quite often. If this is one of my first scenes, I'll just click the plus, and it'll show up in the tab up here as scene 1. Zoom out a little bit, rotate it a little bit. I can change the pitch just to be a little creative, but not too much apparently. Can't get too far away. And this will be scene number 2. I'll click the plus, then rotate it around. I think I can make this work. I want to see my character somewhat each time. There we are. Scene number 3. And now I think I'll back out and just show off the fact that I've created a panorama. So I'm going to back out to here. And create a scene, just for demonstration purposes. I wouldn't use this if I was creating the scene to show to a client or show to someone else, but for our purposes, since we're in a class, we'll do that. I have to tilt it down quite a bit to get below. Now how would we fix that? How would we make it so this isn't visible? I think we'd have to actually drop that. So let's see if we can do that. I'm going to back out. Notice when I back through the edge of the wall, it goes much slower. Let's see if I can move that. I'm going to click the Move tool. I'll grab this corner, use the down arrow, and I'll drag it down just a little. Okay, let's go back in and see if that changes it. And to go in, I always tip it. Tip the cup, go in, and then tip it back. I've looked and I see that the white edge has been extended, so maybe moving it down wasn't the best thing. So I'm going to reverse that. So I'll press the Move tool and I'll drag this back up and close that gap. I think that might be better. Now let's try it. Okay, I kind of like that. So I'm going to do 2. One from this side, and then I'll rotate my scene around a little bit, which includes my 2 trees, my 2 models, and see how well they blend in. So I think I've gone past 6, but this seems kind of fun, so I'm just going to continue creating a few more scenes. And I am doing them kind of in order. In other words, in the rotation. Okay, let's stop there and see what this looks like. I should be able to go to View, and from View to Animation. From within Animation, I should be able to play the scenes that I have. So that was scene 9. This is back to scene 1, scene 2, eight, and back to 9. Okay, so I'll stop this play. Now I can go from page to scene to scene by doing page down or page up. I can go from one scene to the next or go back. Let's save this. And that's the end of this project.